So you can vote on the Post-it note if you want to. Hey, I like this one. You can click on that little thumbs up and you can vote. You can also, I'm not gonna do it right now, but I'm just gonna show you how this would work. If you see a theme, if some of these things seem to look the same to you, you can drag them together and it'll pop up this thing that asks you, do you wanna merge these two things together? And I'm not gonna merge it right now, but what that enables us to do essentially is, as a community, we can use this like a giant whiteboard and the Post-it notes all around our room, and we can throw up the Post-it notes and organize them together and vote on them. And it gives us a space for us to interact a little bit richer than just the chat box in Zoom. I'm gonna stop sharing now. So I welcome you to participate through that link. If you have challenges, please message us through the Zoom chat, and we can try and support you with that. It's been a fun, cool tool. A lot of the functionality you're seeing right now is free. So you can do a couple of boards and use it as a free tool to engage virtually. It's something that we've been using a lot that we really enjoy here in Kitsap. I also wanted to remind everybody that we are recording, just FYI. The only conversations that will be recorded will be the conversations here in the large room. So when you go to your small group breakouts, those will not be recorded. We apologize, but that also is the reality of if we were all gathered together in person. And if you were at a small group table, you wouldn't have access to a recording of the conversation at the small group table next to you. So hopefully we bring that kind of understanding to this and we can have some fun. And I'll repost the link in the chat several times here, because one of the challenges we have with Zoom chat, if you're not aware, is that it's not a historical document. What I mean by that is the moment you log in, your Zoom chat is blank. If you lose internet connection like I have, you come back in, your Zoom chat is blank. And so it's really challenging to share resources in that way. We'll continuously populate resources and information in the chat, but just know and then ask for grace. If you find that you need something, we'll repost it over there. So Delana, is that the intention you wanted? And now I think we're ready to kind of kick us off and have some overview of the community practice, and then I'll dive into my section. Is that right? Delana, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry. So Marilyn Gisser from the Essentials for Childhood is our main contact at Department of Health, and she has been an amazing part of this team and making sure that this happens this year, even in spite of all of the challenges that we're all facing to make community happen. So I'm going to have Marilyn share with us a little bit about the history of the community of practice. And while we're listening to that, if you haven't had a chance to do Fun Retro, this is a great time to just listen and learn the history for those of you who are new to the community of practice, and also engage in that Fun Retro if you haven't had a chance to yet. Marilyn, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So my internet went out, but luckily I joined by the phone, so I don't think you can see me, but glad you can hear me, and I'm glad I joined by the phone. So yes, I'm Marilyn Gisser. I work at the Department of Health on Essentials for Childhood. Essentials is a CDC-funded partnership that promotes safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments with the vision of preventing ACEs and building resilience. So I am so excited to be with you all today in this virtual space, and I'm really proud of Essentials' role in making this possible. Essentials recognizes that preventing ACEs and reducing the impacts of trauma happens at many levels: policy, systems, community, organizations, and individuals. And a few years ago, we were looking for ways to support and lift up community-based work and help connect it to the state. We talked to a lot of our partners, and we really heard that many people working in communities felt isolated and they wanted a space where they could connect with peers and learn together and from each other. So we responded by hosting the first of these gatherings in Tacoma in 2018. We had a great positive response, and we heard a strong desire to continue. So since then, we hosted 3 more in-person one-day gatherings in different locations across the state. We alternated between Eastern and Western Washington. And these gatherings create an opportunity to learn from peers, deeply engage in the work of building resilience and reducing ACEs. And this has been a great opportunity for all of the participants, whether they've been to all the gatherings or just one. And we know some of you are new here today, and we're so glad you're here. So at each location, we highlighted some work that is local and use that to start a conversation like we're going to do today. And we've also hosted about a dozen webinars since the summer of 2019. The webinars provide supplemental learning on research and practice for people who've attended our in-person gatherings. They also stand alone and engage people in network who may not be able to attend all-day events. Webinar topics have been suggested by needs and interests that bubble up in our events, and they highlight practices in our communities. And recordings of those webinars and materials are available on our website and our YouTube channel. And if I get back to the internet, I'll share that in the chat, or maybe I'll send it to Marlena and she can send it out later. So our Clark County partners had been wanting to host a gathering there, and we had planned one for May, and they were Delana and Cindy Meyer in Clark County and others were really excited to highlight their innovative work and engage more local partners there. And COVID came and we had to cancel and regroup and figure out how we were navigating this new world. And of course, we realized that it was more important now to connect. People wanted to connect and they wanted to navigate the intersection between ACE's work, COVID, and racism, which of course also has really been bubbling up. And our friends in Clark County were so eager to share their great work. So here we are today. I'm so excited to welcome you for Essentials for Childhood. I hope you get some inspiration and learn something you can use and make some new connections. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. We're going to switch it over to Cody now to talk about just kind of some of this intersectional work that we're all doing and give us some framing for today and for kind of not just these conversations, but the veracity of all of the conversations that, that we as a society are having right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Delana. And I've been honored to be a part of the community of practice at the planning group level and then at the participant level since kind of its beginning. So it's been a really rich, rewarding experience. And our biggest goal for the day is that we continue that experience, that we continue to center learning, and that is the intention and the purpose for our conversation today. So thank you so much. I want to kick off and acknowledge, give some credit to the amazing Vu Le. If you're not familiar with his work, he is amazing and brilliant and hilarious. And he, at one of his PowerPoints, commented that there's been some research done that baby animals activate a part of our brain that invites in empathy and connection and this sense of safety. And so I sprinkled baby animal images throughout my PowerPoint wherever I could jam them in with no other intention but to try and activate that part of your brain. And just looking at this little pig has made me feel a little bit more centered as I'm navigating this stress of the internet and everything else. So thank you again for leaning in with us and having some fun. So that's the purpose of the baby animals, nothing more. I also want to acknowledge an amazing webinar I had the good fortune of participating in that is the manifestation of white supremacy in the child welfare system. And these community agreements come from that webinar. Choose authenticity over comfort. Embrace both messiness and kindness. Practice personal and group accountability. Be aware of equity of voice. And I acknowledge that a big portion of the training or of today's gathering might be in spaces like this where you'll be on mute. So just acknowledge equity of voice in chat in the ways that you're communicating there. And then when we go to our small groups, try and be mindful of and invite in equity of voice in the small group conversations when we go to those. We ask and invite you to listen in the same way that you want to be heard and that you honor subjectivity versus objectivity. And I'll share the link to that webinar for those that are interested later. So I think we're all together here today in large part because of this pyramid and this this face is, I believe, the face I made the very first time that I saw the ACES science research. You see, I'd been working in a behavioral rehabilitation center for and in the child welfare system for about 5 years by the time I finally was able to have access to this information. And yes, you'll get a copy of all the slides and links and everything after the event. And so I saw this this pyramid, and what I acknowledged was the work that I was doing, even the way we thought about the children that we were trying to serve, was based upon a foundation of understanding about human behavior that was fundamentally inaccurate. A belief that we're always in control of our behaviors, that we are, and that behavior management was something that we could coach and teach and train. And it fundamentally did not center this science, the science of humanity, the science that acknowledges that we are all humans and that our brains and bodies adapt and develop based on our experiences. So for me, it was this like really, really big response. And I was like, wow. Something else that I want to acknowledge was that, you see, I had a paradigm when I went to work with those youth. My undergrad was in psychology, but my childhood had also primed me to look at the world in a certain way. And I rarely, if ever, share this, but I have an ACE score of 0. And I rarely share this because I have this odd sense of shame about having an ACE score of 0. But I think that we need to acknowledge that no one is responsible for their own ACE score. It was nothing that I did. It was the incredible support that my parents had and the whole community that supported them in being able to provide that type of childhood for me. But that was really powerful and profound when I saw this information and the science information, because it helped me understand the youth that I was working with and the families that I served in an entirely different way. And I want to press pause here because I want to acknowledge this amazing quote from George Box, that all models are wrong and some are useful. And that when I first got exposed to the adverse childhood experiences model, it was so affirming to what I saw in the world that I was like, this is it. And when I first started doing trainings and conversations about it, I struggled to respond to criticism from our community about the model, because I thought that if I criticized the model, this framework, this pyramid of understanding our world, that I was going to have to throw it all away. But I want us to lean into and acknowledge that what I've actually learned to come to understand and respect is that all models are wrong. The ACEs pyramid is not perfect. It doesn't explain all of what we understand, but I think it can be useful. And I've found it profoundly useful in my work professionally and personally. And I also wanted to bring forward the amazing work of the RISE Center out of California. And they're the ones who contributed to an adaptation of the ACEs pyramid that hopefully many of you have seen before, where they added in these 2 layers of the social conditions and the local context and the generational embodiment and historical trauma, because those are also influencing us. And as my dear friend Aaron talks about, we need to push past this paradigm of believing that children are born as a, quote, blank slate, that we are born into a society, and we are also bringing with us the experiences of our ancestors, both good and bad. And so I really think that this work is calling us to acknowledge that, as the RISE Center eloquently puts, if it's not racially just, it's not trauma-informed. So if we're going to try and build trauma-informed systems, we need to be centering and acknowledging all sources of trauma, not just the ones that fit nicely into the paradigm that we have identified and that we're working with. And maybe that's the ACEs questionnaire or some other sheet, right? Is that there is going to be always sources of trauma and toxic stress that don't show up on the sheet that we've created. And so from this context, I wanted to share just a tiny bit more about myself, is that I grew up in a town, Walden, Colorado. My mom actually painted that sign. In a town of 800 people. She's the science teacher and the painter in our community. And I grew up an hour and a half from a stoplight. So my food came in cans and my culture came in boxes. The TV, books, CDs. That was the way I engaged in most culture in my community. We were a very, very small, all monochromatic community, 99.9% white in the mountains of Colorado. And what I started to acknowledge, and what I've had the grace of amazing people to help me learn, is that our identity is multifaceted. And so when I think about privilege, I was led to believe, and this comic that I've stolen here on the side comes from the On the Plate comic. If you've ever seen this, Google search On the Plate, and again, I'll send you the link to it. I was led to believe that anything I did was my own accomplishment, and anything that was a challenge for me was the fault of some force working against me, right? Like, this is how privilege plays out, is that you tend, it's really hard to see it from the inside. So I am white, which means that I have the privilege of turning on the TV and I can see white males doing literally anything. I can see white male doctors, white male drug dealers, white male drug dealing doctors. I can see literally white males portraying anything in our culture. And that influences what I believe I'm capable of. Again, I'm male, which to become white and to become male meant that I had to silence parts of my humanity. And that was told to me through the coaches in every sports and athletics thing that I participated in. They would make comments that told me that being vulnerable or being weak was somehow associated with being feminine, and that was not a part of masculinity. But I had an amazing human at home, my father, who routinely showed me that that was not the only definition of masculinity in our society. I'm also heterosexual, able-bodied, which means that I navigate a world where I don't have additional stress each time I enter a physical space, wondering if the design of the room was meant for individuals with my mobility status and my needs in mind. I'm cisgendered, which means that my physical anatomy matches the way that I feel about myself and my sex organs. And this shows up in how I navigate a community where I don't have stress about walking into a restroom in public, but other members of our community might. And I'm also middle class. So although I have experienced times when I went without, I have not experienced profound hunger in the same way that others have. So I just wanted to bring in this concept around privilege and acknowledging some of my own privilege and the continuing work that I'm going through to try and find the millions and millions of ways in which society has been constructed to view me as human and a whole person. And the two things that I think unite all of us, regardless of our work here today, is that number one, we're all humans, and number two, we all work with humans. But there was a time in the construction of our nation when we didn't define those the same way. Meaning that there was a time when being a human and being a whole person was uniquely held for white, male, landowning individuals in our community. And that this is just one paradigm, and that there are many other ways of knowing the world. So I'm going to invite in here this other idea, is that this concept around our community is like a garden. So I've really been struggling right now during COVID and watching the social unrest around racial injustice in our community, and doing most of this via Zoom and in isolation. I've been really struggling to make sense of the world and I've been searching for metaphors that'll help me understand. So I want to invite in one that I've found that I'm wrestling with that might help all of us think this through. And it's this concept that our community is like a garden. And that we acknowledge that all plants need certain universal things: soil, sunlight, nutrients to grow. But we also, if you've done a little bit of amateur gardening, you know that some plants flourish under slightly different conditions than other plants. And that the gardener has made decisions about where to put the plants, where to direct the flow of water and resources and energy, and that from this context, every community is perfectly designed to maintain the status quo. So when we see inequities in our community, when we acknowledge that some plants are flourishing while others are struggling, our garden was perfectly designed for that purpose. And if we're thinking that, if we're acknowledging disproportionality, if we're acknowledging these issues, we need to dig a little bit deeper, get under the soil, and acknowledge what are the root causes of the inequities that we're seeing. So who is the gardener in our community, right? The gardener is government. The gardener are the individuals who have the power to decide, the power to act, and the control of resources. Some of us may be gardeners in really powerful ways in our community. And all of us are experiencing our community through our unique identities. Our identities in some spaces might be sources of immense resiliency and connection, and our identities in other spaces may be sources of hatred and discrimination. And so what I want us to know is that really when it becomes dangerous is when the gardener is allied with one group, when the gardener prefers tomatoes over potatoes and designs the whole garden to benefit tomatoes while they watch the potatoes suffer and struggle as they fail to provide the necessary nutrients or the water or the sunlight that those individuals and that those plants need to flourish. And when they're not concerned with equity, it can really compound the issues. And this is all coming from the amazing work of Dr. Camara Jones. She has a really powerful TED Talk, Allegories on Race and Racism. So I was struggling with and had started writing up this concept around the garden metaphor. And then I did what I do, which I typed metaphors, gardening metaphors for racism into my Google search, and I found this. And her work really helped me kind of build upon and strengthen this concept. But I think it may be one that helps us as we think about our world and what we're understanding and what we're seeing right now. So, and this is another really powerful image that I think people have seen before, and it's really getting at the roots, the acknowledgement that we experience our communities very differently based on our identities and based on the way in which our communities and the flow of resources has been designed by the gardeners in our community. So it's when I saw this headline that it really made me kind of scratch my head for a second. The fullest look yet at the racial inequity of the coronavirus. The virus isn't inequitable, right? The virus is exposing the inequities that existed in our community. The virus is opportunistic. If we had a whole bunch of plants in our garden and suddenly a storm or a disease came through, killing the plants in our garden, and it wouldn't just randomly tick them out, right? Is that it's exposing the generational challenges of continuous disinvestment in certain parts of the garden and overinvestment in other parts of the garden. And that there is also this acknowledgement that when those plants come to seed, they transfer their wealth and their resources on, meaning that they seed the strongest plants that grew in the garden that was designed for them to flourish, then come to seed. And so after generations of this, your tomatoes are looking amazing, and your potatoes that you never tended to and you never cared for are struggling. So it's from this context that we really wanted to explore these intersections and to just create opportunities for us to lean in and use different mental models, different frames, different paradigms to try and understand our world. So right now, we're seeing COVID decimate our community. Over 200,000 individuals. And from the ACEs context, we can understand this a little bit deeper because there are some underlying health conditions that are that make the experience with the disease of COVID-19 really, really challenging. Those underlying health conditions have a relationship with adverse childhood experiences. This is the population attributable risk, saying that 24% of cancer in our community is associated with adverse childhood experiences. 26% of cardiovascular disease is associated with adverse childhood experiences. Asthma, 17% of asthma is associated with adverse childhood experiences. Current smoking. Smoking is connected with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. 31% of smoking is associated with adverse childhood experiences. And even 15% of diabetes is associated with adverse childhood experiences. And then from this context of racism, I think we also need to acknowledge that the way we've designed the garden is fundamentally exposing certain members of our community to profound risk compared to others. Black children are more than 4 times as likely as white children to test positive for the virus, and Hispanic children are more than 6 times as likely as white children to test positive. And non-white children were also more likely to have known exposure to the virus. This is the layered challenges of living in housing that might be designed differently, in navigating situations where parents have to continuously work throughout the pandemic and don't have the luxury of having, or the privilege of having, a job that allows them to telework, right? And then the last one is this concept around COVID-19. And 2 days ago, we hit the 200,000 fatality mark. And I've seen numerous examples and comparisons to try and help us as humans wrap our minds around this massive amount of loss. Is that it's really, really staggering. And here's one example, is that we have now surpassed the death toll of the last 5 American wars, the combat deaths of the last American wars. I am struggling, and I'm confident that many others on this thing are struggling to just conceptualize the sheer gravity of the amount of loss in our community, and that these individuals are mothers, our fathers, our sons, our brothers, our aunties and uncles. And when we lose members of our community, it can impact the whole garden. So we wanted to start with this because our mental model, the way we think about problems, determines the solutions that we seek. And that there's nothing necessarily physical or expensive or even slow about a paradigm change. It can happen in a millisecond. I saw that pyramid, that slide, and it changed my view of the world. Once I saw the ACEs science information, it confirmed what I had been experiencing for the last 5 years working with families in the child welfare system. But whole societies are another matter, and that they will resist challenges to their paradigm harder than they resist anything else. This is why this movement for social justice is so critical. And what we see happening right now is so powerful and profound, and we need to maintain our energy here to continue pushing our society to change its paradigm and not just return to normal, because the normal wasn't working for many, and I'd argue all of us in our community. So how do we change paradigms? I'm almost done here. How do you shift paradigms? Well, the scientist Thomas Kuhn has studied scientific revolutions, and when we've gone from thinking of the Earth as the center of the universe to acknowledging that it's not even the center of our solar system, right? When we've changed how we viewed the world, there's 3 things that we got to do. Number 1, keep pointing at the anomalies and the failures of the old paradigm. So keep pointing at the ways in which the current paradigm doesn't work. Speak louder and with more assurance from the new paradigm, from the anti-racist paradigm, from the trauma-informed paradigm. As we take on these new paradigms, continue to speak louder and work with the active change agents, the vast majority of people who are open-minded, and work with them because there are many gardeners in our community who are open-minded, and as we start to introduce these new paradigms around anti-racism, around trauma-informed care, around ACEs-informed work, hope-centered, all of these words, I think, are another acknowledgement that the paradigm is failing us, and that's why we're smashing words together, because we're desperately searching for the language that helps us understand what we're doing. And I just wanted to end with this, is an acknowledgement that from one of the teachers that we've had the pleasure of working with in our community, that we've worked with on this trauma-informed frame, is that they acknowledge that now they can have a profound impact in the lives of the students that they work with just by shifting their paradigm. They didn't need money, new resources, but now they have these non-negotiables. They greet all kids at the door, praise them publicly, correct them privately, and they hold class meetings because they understand that human connection is a critical thing for our safety and for learning. And that when you call out behavior in public, you can disrupt that connection and make it really challenging. So we're gonna do another fun retro here, and then we're gonna send you to some small groups to chat amongst yourselves. I think is the plan. Delana, correct me if I'm way off board, and I'm probably over time, so thank you. But we're gonna do another fun retro. We'll invite you to respond to a couple of questions here about what are the intersections that you're noticing in your community? What is helping people flourish, and who is flourishing, and who needs access to resources and relationships? So I'm gonna stop my share. I'll drop the link to the Fun Retro in the box, and I invite you all to participate in Fun Retro again. As I breathe and kick it over to Delana, because I am totally dysregulated and I don't know what we're supposed to be doing right now. So thank you.
We got you, Cody. This is a team. Thank you so much for that overview. And the term level setting is happening a lot, and it's one of those like Zoom bingos. For those of you who have level setting on your bingo card, you can mark that off now. So that's a lot. So I want to give us all a collective moment to breathe. And as so many wise self-regulation folks have taught me, when we breathe in quicker and out slower, we deactivate our vagus nerve. So breathe in quickly and out slowly if you're like, that felt like a fire hose and I need a minute. While you're doing that, go ahead and reflect on the Fun Retro. One of the things that I am most proud of as we move into our next section is the amazing work that I get to see here in Clark County. I grew up in Spokane in foster care and have lived up and down the I-5 corridor, including Whatcom County, Snohomish County, Skagit County. So I've had the privilege of seeing a lot of our state's work. And while I come from the opposite end of the spectrum as Cody, on the ACEs scale for 10 ACEs kiddo, I also get to recognize that those 10 ACEs don't mean that I don't walk through the world in a very specific way. And so the information that we're grappling with today is we're trying to show up differently for communities of color, as we are trying to show up differently, period, right? As we're just trying to be our best selves and show up for each other, is to recognize that that the work happens in different ways at different times for different people, and that flexibility, that adaptability will serve us really well. So Cody, thank you so much for framing that out for us. Clark County is very unique in its relationship to Portland, and it being one of the oldest communities, the oldest technical city in Washington, based on how we frame cities, but definitely not the oldest community in Washington. Juliet's laughing at me because I almost missed it. We're all learning. So Clark County has its own unique personality, sometimes multiple personalities, because of how it has formed and how it has shifted over the years. And one of the things that has been a great joy for the last decade of living here is to watch what happened after the family policy councils were kind of phased out or morphed into other things, and what happened here in Clark County. And to give us an overview of that is Cindy Meyer from Clark County Public Health. Cindy's got some slides, and she is the, among other things, leader of the ACEs Action Alliance here in Clark County. So Cindy, do you want to give us that overview?
Sure, that would be great. Can you all hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I hope. Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much, Delana. And I want to start off with a nod to Cody and Delana and the amazing work they put into organizing this today. They were really the powerhouses behind today's meeting. So thank you so much for that and for giving us a chance, Essentials for Childhood, to kind of focus on and showcase some of the work that's going on here in Clark County. So I wanted to start off today just by talking about how really partnership is at the root of our work in Clark County. And I think that we have really learned over the years that we can't do much alone, but we can do a ton together. It's kind of our local tradition. People are strongly invested because we know it's our community. We have limited resources in any organization. And so working together is a way to kind of maximize that. It also lets us support that upstream work that's so important, and we can reduce the redundancy of our efforts by aligning our goals. It also leverages our data because we can share that with one another and use that to drive our change, and it increases our trust and our responsiveness to one another. So those are some of the reasons why we like working together. And I love this fancy little line that's appeared on my, I don't know if you can all see that or not, but anyway, I don't know where it came from. But some of the efforts that we have led through Clark County Public Health, I'm going to focus on, but then I also want to really talk about other things that have bubbled up from our community. Within Clark County Public Health, we started Faith-Based Coffee back in 2012. And that was something that we worked on to really strengthen our cross-sector relationships. We knew that there was a great need, especially in our central Vancouver area, needs of students and families that needed to be met. And a faith-based nurse worked with one of our public health nurses and said, why don't we find a way to connect our faith communities that have so much to share and so much heart to serve with our schools? If only we could bridge that divide, we would really have a strength there. And so we did, got together, presented the needs that were out there, and everybody talked about how can we leave evangelism or personal beliefs at the door so we could better serve our families and community. So what we did through that is we did monthly meetings that let us improve the awareness of needs that are in our community, allows us to leverage those resources and supports and improve our advocacy. And it really helped us through monthly presentations from around the community to really understand what our issues are. So a few of the successes we've had are that this group highly motivated and organized and advocated during our housing crisis that we had recently, and were able to get some policy changes implemented that have protected people. They work very hard on food support, providing food through our school pantries, diaper pantries, clothing pantries in all of our schools, providing tutoring and mentoring services and other things. And this has been recognized by NACCHO as a promising practice, and it has been presented at a lot of conferences. So we're very pleased with that program. Another thing that we started in 2015 with just about 7 people in a room was the ACES Action Alliance. And we got together initially to do a community screening of Raising of America. And at the time, the political environment here was not such that we felt that we could really do that. But we said, let's still keep meeting and talking about ACES, because the topic's sort of been off the table since the Family Policy Council funding went away for our community. So we had another meeting and 25 people came, and we had another meeting and 50 people came, and we had another meeting and 75 people came, and now we have about 600 people who are loose or close members of the Alliance. Our main focuses are education and outreach, cross-sector collaboration, data collection, working on trauma-informed organizations, and change, policy, environmental, and system change. So we've done a ton of educating in the community, and I think that's our greatest strength, is that we've done a lot of outreach and tried to really create that common vocabulary and understanding of terminology and impact of ACES. We have a website, a Facebook, a monthly newsletter, and when my email is shown at the end of this, you're very welcome to send me an email if you'd like to be subscribed to our newsletter. We have a speakers bureau. We do a lot of community events, book readings, film screenings, and we have learning collaborative meetings. But recently we thought, gosh, we've been 5 years on now. Let's get a steering committee together so that we can figure out where we need to be for the next 5 years. And that group has really decided that our strength is in education and outreach and cross-sector collaboration. So that's where we're going to be putting our emphasis for the future, and then working with other community organizations to think about building a children's council that might be more strongly situated for advocating for policy change. One of the things that came out of our meetings was a focus on equity and exclusion of BIPOC communities. And so we developed this little logo because one of the things that came out was that People post the sign in their windows that says everyone's welcome, and it's all written in English. And so where is something that reflects the fact that we don't all speak English? So this was just a small thing, but it kind of symbolizes some of the types of work we've done. We've worked across the community, but it's not just public health and it's not just the ACES Alliance, it's everybody. This community really got the message and came up with a million different ways that we're addressing ACES through different programs, through collaborative efforts, through school efforts, and in our Justice Department. And I hate that I have a logo of handcuffs there, but I couldn't find a good logo, so please forgive me for that because I think it's kind of really negative. But anyway, there's so much going on across all these areas, and people like Delana Meyer and Curtis Miller and Ruhi Tufts and gosh, I could name a million names in our justice and corrections and law enforcement group that are working so hard on this in our schools. It's just happening across the board. So I want to kind of close the circle by just saying that this is a community effort. And I think these collaboratives, the greatest strength that they have is bringing people together so that they get inspired and take the message back out and think creatively about, okay, how can I influence my sphere and my world? And I'm just so thankful to have that in our community. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Delana and Cody.
Thanks so much, Cindy.
And I'll stop sharing.
So one of the pieces of the ACES Action Alliance and the work that Cindy was just sharing with us is that it's vast. In our community, it is not as connected as we want to see it yet, right? It's becoming more connected over time. But so much of it has gotten more connected, and it continues to be this living, breathing organism. And one of the joys of my work is to be able to find the spots where collaborative work within big systems might be happening, and public health is aware of those things and doing those things. And then there are these other community pockets and just people doing work. And so today's small group breakouts are really about a blend of that big system collaboration and then other pockets that we might not notice or we might not name as trauma-informed practice if we're stuck within that one singular paradigm. And so as we go into this next section, I'm just delighted to share with you the pieces of our community that don't get recognized enough, and the work that is happening that we might not call trauma-informed practice on a regular basis, but it is definitely what is helping shape and turn and develop all of the community of work in the ecosystem of compassion that is developing and continues to grow here in our community. So I want to share my screen and give you an overview really briefly of just what the 6 groups are, or I'm sorry, 7 groups are. I'm assuming folks can see that, yes? Give me thumbs up or head nods, great. Okay, so we have 7 options for people to choose. And those 7 options represent a really broad spectrum of the work happening here. First is part of the ACES Action Alliance work with Cindy, which is the K-12 Focus on Opportunity. And this is a breakout that's going to focus on the collaborative approaches to uncovering school and student needs. And each of these folks is going to give a brief elevator pitch for you after I list them out. Next, we have the Juvenile Court Helps Program, which is a diversion program for low-risk offenders. We have a collaboration of different, a collection of different pieces of work happening within our Black community that are both in Clark County and across the river. There is the Latino COVID Rapid Response work with Clark County Latino Youth Leadership. Session 5 is related to nature, habitat, and the work happening not just with the Ridgefield Wildlife Refuge and Urban Refuge programs, but also the urban indigenous communities here in our region. And then groups 6 and 7. 6 is going to be measuring resilience with Cody, and 7 will be an open discussion group with me for those who look at this list and are like, I'm really feeling like we need to talk about this other thing over here. So that's for the folks who are like me. Any of you who met me, know that that's usually the me. So I'm going to lead that group. So if there's not a good fit for you in 1 through 6, you can come to the open side. So as you hear these descriptions, you'll notice on the top right of your face or of your screen that you can change your name in Zoom. And so what I'll have you do is click on the 3 dots and then select rename, then add the group number that you would like to join to your name and just leave it there, because right after we hear these descriptions, you're going to choose your group by putting the number in your name, and then we're going to go to a 15-minute break. And you'll be sorted into your breakout groups during the break, because it's going to take a while for Marlena to sort hundreds of people. Yeah. So
Please, sorry, Delina, please try and put the number at the front of your name, because that'll help us with, it organizes alphabetically, and that will help Marlena put you in the right group. So if you can put your number first and your name, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
As a backup, but we ask you to not do this unless you have to. You can also put it in the chat or a private message. Any of us but Marlena specifically, to put it in the chat if we can do that. And again, to explain it, and it's at the bottom right corner of the screen, you can see the description. When you look at your face on the Zoom call, and on phones it's going to be different. And I'm not on a phone right now, so I can't describe that. But if somebody else wants to jump in, but you have 3 dots on your face on your little window. If you click on the 3 dots, you'll have the ability to rename, so you can change your name on your Zoom screen. If you put the number of the group you want to join, so if you want to join group 5, Nature That Nurtures, you would put 5 in front of your name. Okay, so first up, Cindy, can you give us a quick overview of what group 1 is going to talk about?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I talked a little bit earlier about collaboration, and we have brought that to our community and formed of something we call the Trauma Informed Schools Work Group. It's a very inspired name. Anyway, we started this back in 2017 as a way to have schools, districts across our whole community. There's like 7 or 8 of them, a chance to get together and share what they're doing and find best ways to move forward, because it was really hard for some of them to really communicate with each other. So out of that have grown great alliances and partnerships. And in this session, we're going to focus on 2 things that we're doing right now to help uncover what student needs are and what school needs are. One of them is the Handle with Care program. Some of you may have heard of that. If you haven't, please join us and you'll learn more about how law enforcement is working with our schools to help identify kids who might be at high risk of ACEs. And the second is our Trauma Informed Schools survey. So we just recently kicked that off. We've completed it with 3 districts, and Haley Pickus, who is with Clark County Public Health and who is our evaluator there, is going to join me in this presentation to talk about that survey process, what we went through in creating the survey and how we worked with the districts to administer it, and what our reports and results are looking like. And there will also be an opportunity to really talk about what your issues are and how you might solve these problems or what else is on your mind. So I think that's the case in all of our breakout groups. It'll be interactive.
Yes, thanks, Cindy. All right, number 2, we have Ruhi Tufts from Clark County Juvenile Court. Ruhi, you want to give us an overview of the HELPS program session?
Did you just call me Roofie, Delina?
No. You were obviously mishearing things without a lack of coffee, so.
Okay, so the HELPS program is a program for youth and a connected adults, for families that are involved with the juvenile court. It's a seminar. When we've done it in person, it's 12 hours over 2 days. Since we moved it to Zoom, it's 9 hours over 4 days. And it's an interactive seminar to build on connections, build on skills, increase communication. We cover a number of topics. It's housed at juvenile court, but it's really a community program because we bring in partners like Delina and Cindy and 4-H youth development and things like that to make it a rich and community-based program. So we'll talk about that in more detail, talk about some of our successes, some of our challenges, and then do a little bit of brainstorming on how we can help the program take its next step in evolution.
Awesome, thank you. All right, group 3 is Blair Hervey with some of the mobilization happening in the Black community. Do you want to talk about what you are going to cover?
Absolutely. So my name is Blair Hervey. I'm the corporate strategist for PDX Women of Color and the creator of the 2028 Canceled series. So it's a more non-conventional or unconventional community effort. Essentially, we gather in this space every Monday for an hour to elevate our mindset, become a better version of ourselves, and to create game-winning strategies for absolutely any and every season. So I'll be sharing more about community initiatives that have helped Black and Brown women, particularly overcome re-traumatization and create healing spaces. We've also created spaces and learning spaces for our white allies locally and globally. So I'll talk to you all a little bit about that as well. So happy to have you.
Awesome, thank you so much.
No problem.
For group 4, we have Diana Avalos Leos with the Clark County Latino Youth Conference and Youth Leadership. Diana, do you want to give your overview?
Sure, thank you. So good morning, everyone. Overview for today's presentation, be sharing the work that we've done in response to COVID-19 to promote health equity through a culturally responsive and trauma-informed approach. And we'll go a little bit more into the work that we've been doing, our partners, and some of the learnings that we have, gained from the work that we've been doing here in the community.
Thanks, Diana. Next up is Juliet McGraw with the urban indigenous community and nature-related work. Juliet?
Hi, good morning. One of the things that I'll be elevating in our conversation is how we were able to provide 500 meals to elders with using access to public spaces by gathering nettle right before COVID hit. And how local indigenous groups around the Portland metro area, such as NAYA, the Native American Youth and Family Center, NARA, which is the Native American Rehabilitation Center, and specifically their youth programs, what I do on site at the Richfield National Wildlife Refuge, and the Native Gathering Gardens in the city of Portland's Park and Rec. So basically we're doing a lot of community efforts on how we can be responsive to bringing first foods and traditional medicines to those in our community that are most at risk, specifically our elders and specifically families with young children and other at-risk members of our community. So I'm excited to share that work. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet. And Cody, what's going to happen in measuring resilience, group 6?
Nothing, Delana. I've decided that all the other sessions sound cooler and I'm going to cancel mine. No, honestly,
I mean, you do you.
Amazing. We panicked when we saw the 300 people registered, and so I offered to host a conversation. It'll be very high level about efforts over the last several years to capture information about resiliency at a public health level, at a population level, and to explore different ways that we can gather this data. It's never been done where we've captured both information about adverse childhood experiences and a robust list of resiliency factors to identify what are the sources of resiliency that help individuals who've experienced trauma navigate and flourish and create environments for their children that doesn't continue that intergenerational transmission of trauma. Again, it's something that the research is lacking on, and so we're hopeful to use some resources locally to gather this information because I think we desperately need it.
Thank you. And finally, for group 7, as I mentioned, we will be talking about the things we're not talking about. We may wander a lot, so this is likely to be a little bit less structured group and more talking about the pieces that that we're curious about or that we want to see in the future, or this could also be a group if you feel a little bit lost and you're just not sure what all this is, it might be a nice a spot for you to engage there across lots of different things. So we need a break. You guys have been super duper duper patient with us. I want to give you that before you go. Please make sure that you have done the naming selection. If not, you will be assigned on our whim, and we'll have some fun with that. If you have any questions, keep sending those to us in the chat. And we're going to start a 15-minute break now. So I have 10:09 on my clock. We're going to pretend that says 10:10. So come back at 10:25. Sound good? Awesome. I'm going to leave this slide up so people can continue on there.
One last opportunity here. If you haven't already, please go ahead and change your name to indicate which room and group conversation you want to engage in, to hear a little bit more about. And if you're still struggling with that, that's okay. Anyone who stays in the main room, Marlena can help you join one of the small groups individually. You can let her know which one you want to move into, and she can move you into that room as a kind of last option there.
It's all ready to go. So basically, if you've never done this before, you'll get a pop-up on your screen saying you're being invited to join a certain group. So just accept that. And if you don't get it, let me know via chat. Okay.
Delana, anything final before we head off to our rooms?
Nope. We have somehow managed to go from 10 minutes behind to 15 minutes ahead. This is a miracle. It never happens. How did this happen, you patient people? What that means, though, is because you've been listening for a long time, let's leave some of that time extra in our small groups, and then some extra time for reflection when you come back from small groups. Sound good?
Yes.
If you hate that idea, someone tell me and I'll rethink it. All right. So with that, please enjoy a lively and robust conversation around things you care about, and we'll see you soon. We're all coming back. That was a lot. I was like, let's have extra time. And we're going to have extra time. And it still went like, boom. And I was like, I want more time. I see some folks that I didn't get to see before are here with us now. So welcome. If this is the first time you're seeing my face, I'm Delina Meyer. I am one of two co-hosts. Our other co-host is Cody Russell. And the power behind the the power behind the Zoom, making sure all of this happens, is Marlena Simmons. So if you have any challenges, issues, or questions, private message any of us, but especially Marlena, because she's more likely to be able to change focuses, whereas Cody and I are, doing this. Let's do a quick little check-in the chat. Hold on just a moment. I am not quite as Zoom proficient as I always wanted to be. In the chat, I'm going to put in here, sorry, just a minute. There's some emojis. How, this was coming into the meeting, but how are you doing coming into this section of the meeting? There's a smiley face, there's a mask cover, there's kind of a wonky face, there's an inquisitive face, a cool face, and a star face. You can, if you don't want to copy and paste those emojis, or you don't have the willingness to do that, or ability 1 through 6 would be the associated piece. I just copied and pasted the little emojis because I have no idea how to build those out. I always think of starry eyes as inspired. Like when I see starry-eyed emojis, I'm very like, I'm inspired. But I don't know if everybody perceives emojis the same. Maybe not.
I'm sure someone's writing their thesis on it, though.
Oh, man. Subjective interpretation is a real thing. We should really pay attention to it. I'm seeing no frowny faces. That wasn't an option either. It was a trick question in that way. Sorry. So welcome back. Each group had a note taker of sorts. I'm going to share my screen real briefly. And if you didn't have an official note taker and you had to wing it, I apologize, but thank you for your grace in that. I don't know how people do this smoothly. I'm just not smooth at Zoom, it turns out. I'm gonna be though, but by next year, I'm gonna be on it. So when we talk about all of the learning that is happening in all of these different places, how does it feel for you? What are you learning? For speakers, what did you learn from the group that you were in? I want to open it up first for the note takers to share back. What did the participants take out of that? And what were some of the pieces that the speaker took out of it? And if you didn't have a chance to capture both of those, it's totally okay. But I want to allow the note takers to report back first. And you can go in any order. I'll report back for us as we explored a lot of questions that plague us about engagement. How do we engage people that don't necessarily value this work? How do we engage people that don't get it? How do we take care of ourselves when we are surrounded by people who don't know how to empathize or how to tune into this science that's real, these experiences that are real? And we had a really robust conversation about the nuance of that and the different challenges that are being faced by practitioners in this work, right? So one of the pieces that really stood out to me though is I'm used to being able to engage with my community. I've been part of this learning community for many years and part of the ACEs kind of statewide stuff for a decade. So it didn't occur to me. And my beautiful group was really astoundingly wise in bringing to the reality that not everybody has this community. I mean, you all do now, right? But we need regular infusions of community and connection in order to be buoyed up. We need the resilience that comes from relationship. And we talk about that with youth, and we talk about it with families and at-risk folks and all these different pieces. But I am reminded today very much of the privilege that I have in having all of you and all of these wonderful people to learn from. So that was a brief summary for our group. Who would like to go next? Should we start with the K-12 group?
Sure, you bet. I'm going to report because my reporter had to leave. So she, at the last minute, had to run off somewhere to a doctor's appointment or something. So it was very nice of her, though, to take some notes. So in our group, we did have a structured presentation first about the Handle with Care program, which is a way that law enforcement can let schools know if a child's been present during a law enforcement action so that they can institute a response protocol that helps to support and nurture that child without sharing any confidential information. So we talked about that, and then a school survey project that we're doing with the county, with our school districts, to identify where schools are at with implementing trauma-informed approaches. So I can put my email in the chat, and if anyone has questions in other groups about those projects, let me know. But in our group discussion afterwards, a couple of really important points came up. Misty shared a concern that, first of all, children are born in our communities, and then unless they're connected through early childhood education or through WIC or some other system, we lose them oftentimes clear until they go to kindergarten. And so how do we know what's happening for them? How can we connect with them? What can we do? So kind of addressing that systems piece of finding the children and finding the parents where they're at to meet their needs. And then secondly, she mentioned how there are screeners given to parents in the pediatrician's office or at the schools or at the early childhood education centers to help identify if there are ACEs happening in the home environment for kids. But because of trust issues or confidentiality or worries about reputation, parents put down what they think that the providers want to hear instead of being honest. And so how can we change that system so that people feel more confident about sharing their needs? So those were a couple things that came up.
And Cindy, what did you learn from your group?
well. I really learned that seemed to be a concern for our group and our amount of time, because we were talkative presenters. We maybe didn't have as much time to really mull it over as some might, but that I think that is a concern that's out there, and we had a lovely group of people participate. So
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, do we want to have juvenile court go next?
Hi, I was a note taker. My name's Emma. So just to recap on what the Juvenile Court Helps program is, it's making sure kids going through this program are getting the skills including communication, empathy, boundary settings by using community-based practices while maintaining a trauma-based lens. This program really needs people of color to facilitate so we can get that representation. So we are brainstorming ideas in our group. Some of the ideas were getting in contact with Blair's group. I can't remember the name of that right now. If someone could.
PDX Women of Color.
Yeah. And then researching some grant opportunities. There's a program called Our Gems, bringing in other counties, talking to local colleges, like clubs and stuff, to see if there's volunteers that would like to facilitate through there. Incorporating some nutritions into some of the activities, and then connecting with BLM groups.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And Ruhi, what did you learn from your group?
Well, in our program, we are always wanting to grow and evolve to meet the needs of our community. And so our group had, just some really good ideas on concrete ways we can do that, from the content of our programming to the breadth of our network throughout Clark County, but also, now that we're doing things virtually for the time being, we can increase those networks across the state to enrich our program and bring in people of color and different perspectives to serve our clients the best we can. So I got a lot of homework assigned from our group, which is good.
And to remind everybody, I'm going to put it in the chat of what each group topic was, so you can reference back to that. Latino COVID rapid response in the Clark County Latino youth leadership. What were some of your learnings?
Hi, I'm Rose. I'll be reporting out for our group, and we had a bit of a small group, so we may not have as much as everybody else. We went over the campaign that we're working on, that is a Latino-centered health campaign for our community, but not specifically for our community. I would like to point that out, that the information that we use is still, it can be used within other communities. Anyways, we identified the campaign elements, our partners, and went through all of the information like that. We were able to, within the group, identify some potential gaps that we could work on. We do have information on parenting and families, but some people in our group have decided that they would like to further focus on that, further focus on parents, parents of younger children, how to deal with younger children in their online learning and, stuff like that. So that's kind of where we got to.
Awesome. And Diana, what were some of the observations and learnings that you had from your participants?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sorry. What were some of the things that you learned, or new ideas that you got from your participants?
I think for me, one of the big takeaways is that there is a gap in terms of a collaboration across the state to support communities of color and non-English speaking communities of color and non-English speaking communities. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done in that greater space of collaboration.
Cool. All right. Blair, who was your note taker for the Black community mobilization efforts?
Marilyn.
All right, Marilyn. What were some of the learnings that that group had? Marilyn with us?
Hello.
Oh,
Hi. Can you hear me? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm having technology problems, and I'm feeling very self-aware of being the white woman who was sitting in the back of the group of group to lift up the voices of women of color in that space, being the reporter. But I learned so much, and I will do my best to share on that, and look forward to kind of Blair adding to it at the end. But Blair talked about her great work, and I think what really came out was the importance of creating a space for meaningful self-expression. She's done that with, she and her partners in the Portland area have done that. They're meeting every week. They're talking about re-traumatization, microaggressions, creating a healing space, recognizing the importance of that connection, the importance of that energy that comes from that connection. They've been working on wellness. And so here are a couple of her lessons. Let's see, the value of the space for Black and Brown women, with allies invited, but asked to kind of sit down and be quiet, so that the people who the space was created for would have their opportunity. Making the meetings fun and energetic is important. And also she talked about the importance of leaning into discomfort, addressing topics that maybe we're not so comfortable addressing. And we had really great discussion from the group. We asked about both what's working and where are their challenges. And some of the what's working is because, as Blair said so eloquently, people are leaping over those barriers. They're finding ways to get around them. We heard about in Federal Way, a group that's creating safe spaces for youth who have been traumatized. They've been in juvenile justice, they've been trafficked, doing a really great job of creating those spaces. Another one we heard about was, in Tacoma, created a space for Black parents who didn't feel comfortable and welcomed in the PTA. The Black Parents Alliance is doing a great job supporting families, helping them navigate the schools and the academic pathways. Let's see, someone who's coming out of a challenge someone asked about, someone who's coming out of the foster care system is really trying to navigate that transition, says we need more spaces for that. So those are some of the highlights. This is really a rich discussion.
Awesome, thank you so much. Blair, what did you learn from your participants in that time together?
Yeah, well done, Marilyn. She reported that thing out all the way. So great. And she gave some great examples as well. I would say personally, what I've learned is that as easily as I jump into this work, oftentimes, I know that it's not easy for everyone. And there definitely should be some grace, but there definitely should be some tools and resources that are put in place to allow people to go do the thing. So oftentimes we are expecting our allies and we're expecting folks to just, pick up the sword and go to war, but they've never been taught how to. They've never been put in a space where they could practice. They've never been put in a space to say that, I'm dealing with my own trauma. So when I pick up this sword, it makes me feel this way. So thinking about how we can continue to create spaces, even for those warriors as well. So I learned a lot from this group. They did a great job.
Awesome, thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, Juliet, who is your note taker?
Stephanie, I also want to just say thank you to my group because I had a massive tech issue and had to leave and come back. So they were extraordinarily patient and were able to guide themselves when I was able.
Awesome.
So Stephanie was our note taker.
Hi. So we were also a pretty small group. So we were talking, I think the main things that really came out were, I think all of us had experience with personal growth and healing and real reverence for nature, and wanting to see and talk about ways that we can bring that to clients. I think the importance of just getting outside and experiencing preferably sunshine because it makes us feel really good, but just, whatever it is, just being with what it is important for mental health, physical health. And we talked a fair bit about how COVID is really kind of pushing innovation for a lot of us, and whether it's something like just meeting a client outdoors and going for a walk, or setting up a child care center at an unused camp space. But people are, because outside is a safer place to be with COVID, a lot of people are looking at, hey, how can we incorporate that? And that we see that as actually a really good thing. We talked about some barriers, particularly that there is a real dominant culture approach to the way that our access to outdoors is set up. We talked about transportation being an issue, money for admission to parks, and just kind of a general lack of knowledge sometimes about what's out there, and what is it like to be out there. And we talked some about the importance of education and just letting people know, hey, here's what it's like to be outside, and it's not hard to be outside, and you can be outside too, even if you don't yourself being represented being outside. And I think that's kind of the gist.
That's great. Thanks, Stephanie. Julia, what was something that you learned from your group?
I think one of the things that I learned most from the group is that there's a lot of indigenous approaches to the work that people may not realize that are aligned with my community. What I heard a lot was, how are we going to take care of the elders in our community? I think that was specifically from Lindsay in Port Townsend. Like, how are we taking care of elders in our community? And then a lot of things were also very youth oriented, and not just getting youth outside, but I'm trying to give credit to the ideas, but I wrote all over this page. I want to say it was Jessica with the building of biking trails and things like that, that not just getting them out on the trails, but getting them building the trails. And so the things that we're doing across for ACEs healing, when we talk about it in the formal context, is echoed a lot from top to bottom what my community is already doing, and the things that it's really nice to see that there's lots of places to dovetail and interact. But across all of it is, how are we helping out at-risk youth? How are we reconnecting people to the landscape? And how are we making sure that those access issues aren't re-traumatizing people? And so there's already a lot of intersection with the work I do with everybody that was in this group. So I thought it was just really valuable to see how much we all had in common.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cody.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies. I forgot to identify the note taker in my room. So if there's a note taker that wants to lend their voice, I'd deeply appreciate it. Otherwise, I will quickly summarize and get us to lunch.
Anybody from Cody's group want to pitch in? Okay. It's all you.
Okay. Yeah, so it was an incredible learning space for me, and I hope that the others enjoyed it. We touched high level on a desire to understand better the types of experiences that help people flourish, especially people who've experienced adversity. What are the type of adult experiences that help them flourish? So we talked about the current efforts, and I will be sending out in the notes from this meeting an opportunity for those who weren't in our session to engage further. We're trying to pull together philanthropy, government, community leaders like yourselves to explore this and to continue exploring this. We know that we're going to have to ask a lot of people in order to get the data, and that it will be could be a challenging thing to undergo. But probably the conversation that was richest was just talking about, how do we facilitate experiences in our community where people feel like they can rely on one another to get their needs met, and that they don't need to get their needs and services and support met through systems and services and service providers. And there was brilliant, amazing ideas. Probably the one that resonated deeply with me was thinking about and talking about art, and using art as a pathway to facilitating healing, facilitating understanding our current world right now. And Jody Knowles with the Luminous Minds project had some amazing ideas there. So I'd encourage you to reach out to her, because I'm not doing it justice, but we really had a rich, fabulous conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. It has been a lot in a morning, and I want to give you a full half hour for lunch. We're going to be in this room. We're going to do a 37-minute lunch because it's 11:53. So we will be playing some music. Some of you will want to talk and chat. Many of us will not. You'll need to step away, and that's totally okay. Make sure that you stretch your body and hydrate and do all of those things and do self-care. We will be back here right at 12:30. And just to give you the preview of the afternoon, I'll be doing a short conversation with you around taking that inside out process of internal trauma-informed practice and individual to a policy and process and systems level. And we'll be doing some small group stuff around that. And then we'll go into our panelists for Q&A. So engage as you can, enjoy your lunch. Any other housekeeping, Cody or Marlena?
None from me.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great lunch. We'll see you back here at 12:30. Letting folks get back in and settled. But if you want to check in the chat, go ahead and put one word that describes how your experience is going today with our time together. So as you engage maybe for the first time with this community of practice and community of learning, what's one word that you would use to describe this day so far? All of us, not all of us, but many of us have had to do sessions or really love doing teaching and facilitation. And as a facilitator, it's always, you know, a gamble, right? We prepare and we hope and we design, and then we get there and we're like, are they getting something out of this? And your responses are saying to my tender little heart, like, okay, good. At least some of you, maybe not all of you, but I hope so. And one of the things about that is that we focus so much on individual change in our society. We are so individualistic that we don't always know how to transition from this intersectional, even if we can access the intersectionality of all this complex work. We know how to apply it to ourselves or our role, but we don't always know how to make that leap to the next, or that pivot to this greater systems work, especially because so many of us have a role that has boundaries to it. Not everybody gets access to be able to say to decision makers or to people who are higher influencers than us, hey, here's another way of doing it. And it can be really discouraging. But I want to spend just a little bit of time with you today as we come back from lunch, talking through how that pivot might work, and then letting you talk amongst yourselves in 3 different groups. And you'll be randomly assigned to those 3 groups. So it'll be a little bit of a different mix than you had this morning, and a larger chunk of folks. So I'm going to share my screen for a little bit. This is so that I don't babble at you longer and in a less organized way. So this is my gift to you. So bear with me. I don't like sharing screens. I don't like slides, but we're going to do it for the sake of organization. But of course, I didn't do that right. So hold on just a quick second. Sorry. Okay. So COVID has really thrown all of us for a pretty big loop. And not everybody is experiencing it the same, right? Like we're not all in the same, but we may all be all in the same storm. We're not all in the same boat. There's that kind of stuff. But it really is about exploring not just the areas of, I'm having a little technical difficulty, I apologize. Not just our areas of where are our systems not intersecting very well, or where are the disparities, but also where has workplace well-being and individual employee well-being taken a dive off the deep end of self-sacrifice, especially in our fields, to degrees that are really toxic. If we were to do a survey, my guess is that less than 10% of us would report that we have a really supportive work-life balance and a really great boss and work set up to where we don't actually have those challenges. Most of us are exhausted all the time. And some of that is our social conditioning, and some of that are the expectations that have become more and more unreasonable in the field of human services and well-being and welfare and all of these different pieces. And so I want to take a minute to just breathe into a way of thinking about these intersections that is not just trauma-informed care. So bear with me. I'm going to walk through one way of thinking about it. Like Cody says, all models are wrong and some are useful, and it's my hope that this one is useful to you. So in the work that I do, this is the model that we follow, and it is really closely tied to several others, but it departs in some specific ways. In trauma-informed care, it's related to the organization and how they offer choice, how they do collaboration and communication and these different pieces, but they leave out a whole bunch of stuff that are really about relationships and often dyads. And so when we were thinking about it, it was what are some principles? What are the 6 principles that encompass those things, but go a little bit beyond, so that when we're talking about how to engage people who have high ACE scores, who are employed with us, or if we don't have a high ACE score, but our staff does, or if we just need to be able to engage with our clients or our staff or our board members or community members in a universally good way, what are some universal principles? And as we looked deeper, we realized that the things that are most important for trauma-informed practice are also the things that are most important for leadership and development, are also the things that are core to anti-racism and DEI work. At the organizational level, these are the things that cross all of them. And anything that is not anti-racism, if it's not addressing equity stuff, it's not trauma-informed, and vice versa, right? We want to call everything by a name, and the name isn't the issue. It's really, are we holding to these things that help us be good to ourselves, to one another, and do that at a policy level, not just at a personal level? So I'm not going to go deep into any of these. I just want you to see it. And I want to talk about it very, very briefly. So at the core of every single human, whether you're a high ACEs person or not, whether you're a person born into wealth and class privilege or not, your education level, none of those things change the fact that everybody needs to feel safe, secure, and like they belong. Adlerian theory talks about that all behavior is seeking significance or belonging. And again, not all models are correct, but many are useful. So everybody needs to feel a sense of security and belonging. And in the workplace and in the work that we do, and right now your workplace is maybe at home, but in your work relationships, if you don't have security and belonging for whatever reason, whether it's your own reasons or the environment's reasons, you're not going to be able to build any of these other things very well. You can have pieces, right? The Maslow's pyramid where you have to have this to have this, it doesn't quite work that smoothly, right? Like nothing is that clean and clear, but it does impede our ability to fully enjoy the benefits of things like collaboration, trust, growth. So if you don't have security and belonging, and if you're not as a leader engaging and building that for the people you want to lead, nothing else is going to happen, especially not for trauma-informed stuff, and especially not for anti-racism stuff. Once we have a sense of security and belonging, then we can actually engage with choice and empowerment. Now, you can give somebody a lot of choices, you can empower them, but if they don't trust you that you're going to honor their choice, they're not likely to engage with it. Have you ever had a kid in one of your programs or even one of your teenagers where you give them a choice, but they side-eye you because they're not real sure if you're going to honor it anyway? This is a really common thing that we do where we give false choices. We don't mean to most of the time, but it's a really common thing that programs do when we're trying to help people, is we pretend like they have a choice when they don't, and that erodes security and belonging. Similarly, once you're building off of that security and belonging and you've given choice and empowerment to the degree that you can for the situation that you're in, recognizing that if you're in a closed loop mental health facility versus a public school, that choice and empowerment look differently in those environments. And so obviously this is subjective to the situation. And it relates to developmental stages. You know, we don't give 6-year-olds the choice that we give 16-year-olds, right? And sometimes we don't give 16-year-olds the choices that we give 6-year-olds because, you know, there are things. But once we have those two pieces really in line, we can move on to these 3 in the middle. And the 3 in the middle kind of are the machine that makes everything go. I haven't found a way to visually organize this yet, but the 3 in the middle are really the gears. Because when we can co-create together, where we're engaged and communicating in an environment of high trust and empathy, so we have choices and security, so we're not worrying about that. And now we have this team building on top of it, right? We have the ability to really perform at our best. That's where growth and support actually happen. And what a wonderful thing to be so secure in our relationships that we can be creative and take risks and communicate our needs and know that we're seen and heard. That's what those 3 triangles, the collaboration and co-creation, engagement and communication, and trust and empathy, that's where they live, and that's where breathing room happens. Lately, the thing I find myself saying the most is that change happens in the middle. And just like this model is really about that, just like in our relationships, it's not the big giant highs and the big giant lows that create a life, right? In all of our relationships, it's all this little stuff in the middle. And so the meat of all of relationships happen with those 3 things. And then we get to growth and support. And growth and support is so essential to making sure that those wonderful pieces keep happening, that they happen for the next crop of folks coming through, that we're sharing what we have. But if we see ourselves as a leader or a trauma-informed practitioner, or we want to grow in our work in anti-racism, or if that's what we're all about, it doesn't matter as much. I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It is not solely about which triangle you fit in or what your role is. These are universal, and we need to be able to identify what is awry, right? If we can name it, we can address it. In our field, folks who know me know that I complain about this a lot, and usually with lots of swear words. In our field, we're real good at passive aggressive, and we talked about it today in our discussion group as well. We're so trained to not say the thing out loud. We're so trained to be polite but not honest. So when people are honest and not as polite, we think the issue is them. And we're seeing that so much around how we judge protesters, around how we turn off our empathy button if we don't like the message in the way that it's being delivered, right? And that's a human thing. It's not just a one culture thing, but we're seeing it play out really, really fiercely right now. And we saw it before too. In trauma-informed work, how often do we go through and hear somebody with a high ACEs score telling about their experience, but they're not saying it in a way that is appropriate. I hate the word appropriate in so many ways. Like, I hate that word. And I don't hate it because I struggle with it. That is one. I'll own that. I hate it because it's the ultimate tone policing. You know, Juliet's reminded me of the tone policing of BIPOC folks, the tone policing of trauma kids, and all of that is a way that we control other people's way of engaging so that we feel more comfortable. You know, if you ask someone to tell you the truth and then you deny their truth because it had swear words in it, did you ever really want to hear their truth? And what if it's worse? What if the truth is actually that you've done harm? You didn't intend to, but it's really, it happens so fast. Shame gets in and our defense mechanisms get up and it interrupts this entire system of growth and connection and life. I want to take just a minute. As you look at these 6, as you look at these 3, go ahead and pop in the chat. Which one of the 6 do you think you're really great at? You're doing really good. You feel like you can facilitate that and do it. And which one of the 6 do you really, like, you're like, oh, that's the one. We're going to take just a minute. Awesome. Yeah, security and belonging is a big one, right? And for some of us, it's helping other people feel safe and belonging, but a lot of us, it's how do we feel safe so we can do our own growth. Yeah. All right. Keeping a close eye on time. I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time to talk through. So when we talk about how to go from one person growing in their own amazing cannonballs of epiphanies and all these things, we often think that there's like this smooth trajectory that goes from how do I influence me and my family and my own well-being to how do I do systems change stuff. And this this picture is how it feels, at least to me, in the work that I've been doing over the last decade and a half. We always think it's linear. We always think that it is very manageable. And what I have found over and over is there are moments where it does kind of do a clean leap up or leveling up, but usually it's, I tell somebody, you know, Laura Porter told me about ACEs on accident one day while she was meeting with somebody in Spokane. I didn't know who she was. I'd never heard of it. And she said, well, hey, have you ever heard of ACEs? And I was like, no, what's ACEs? The person she was meeting with was the former regional director for foster care when I was in foster care. It was this random crazy moment. And she told me, and then I started telling everybody because that's how I am, right? And it grew and grew. And when I talk to all of you, when I talk to folks in other fields, the nature stuff that's happening here with our urban refuge programs and the way that all came together, these are biology and like outdoorsy people and like conservation and stuff that I'm obviously not into as much, but will be shortly. Juliet, stop laughing. But right, I had no idea that these people were interested in that, but they understand what an ecosystem is. And they understand how an ecosystem of care, of connection, and of love can change the course of a kid's life. And that can connect them to nature in ways that are really healing. So off we go, right? And so many of you have stories like that where you told this thing to this other person, or you brought this person that didn't seem to really fit the mold, and then something else big happened. So when we talk about leveling up or taking our personal experience or our professional individual career experience and taking it to policy change and taking it to process change and making life easier for people who are struggling to survive in any facet, this is the chaos that we jump into, and it's so hard to accept that. So I just wanted to give you that visual. Okay, this is my favorite quote. I want you to think about this quote. And I'm going to have to unscreen share, so I'm going to read it out loud and then unscreen share. This is the Audre Lorde quote: "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." How do we use our strength in the service of our vision? How do we leap past our fear, as Blair mentioned? As we go into our groups to discuss this, I want you to think about 3 distinct things. And if you lose track and you just start talking in general, that's fine. Don't stress. This is a low structure expectation. And we'll put them. Cody, can you put these 3 from the agenda into the chat so folks can reference it? You can choose any of the 3, but my hope is that you'll choose just one per group, and that is examining the norms, challenging the norms, and changing the norms. Because we're all in different places, right? And those norms might be norms for our own behavior, norms for our work. Challenging workplace norms is really, really hard. It's hard on us. It's a fearful, scary process, but challenging workplace norms, the second one. How do we challenge those existing policies from a non-reactive position? recently a member of Congress was called filthy names by another member of Congress. You might be aware of this. And regardless of where you lean on the political spectrum, what I found interesting is the words that I heard were, I'm not upset or hurt by your behavior. It's just completely not okay. It's unacceptable. And so often when people challenge workplace norms, they're called reactive or they're causing trouble, right? It's about their emotions versus this is unacceptable. This makes life harder for people, right? And so challenging is really about how do we hold our ground in the face of people trying to find ways to knock us down. And in changing the norms, it's what do we need to feel safe enough to adopt change? What do other people need to feel safe enough to adopt change? So, Marlena and Cody, I'll leave it to you. What is the best way to break folks up?
I can do it randomly, and I think Cody wants about four people to a room.
Okay, 4 people to a room. You have the 3 options for your topics in the chat. So when you get to your room, you're going to pick which one: examining, challenging, or changing norms, and discuss amongst yourselves. Sound good?
We're just randomly going to send you to small groups. And there will not be enough time for this conversation, so know that you will be thrown into a small group and ripped back out of it, and we apologize. That's the nature of this Zoom world, but engage while you're there as deeply as you can, and then come back for the final panelist presentation.
Yep. We're going to have about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's with our incredible honor and pleasure to engage in the final hour of this conversation with all of you, and to bring in the voices of some amazing leaders. Some of them were panelists and presenters from this morning, and you got to hear some of their voices. So we're not going to do introductions again for those individuals who presented in the morning. But in addition to Blair and Diana and Juliet and Ruhi, we are also welcoming a couple other individuals who have been generous enough to grace us with joining on this panel to have these conversations and continue our learning together.
I just want to say Diana sends her regrets. She was actually pulled away unexpectedly, so she won't actually be able to join us. But if people have questions about Latino youth public health campaign stuff, you can message me, or we'll send her contact information out later.
But I wanted to introduce first the 2 new voices to this conversation this afternoon, and ask them just to share a tiny bit about their work and their role and what brings them to this space. So I'd like to start first with my dear friend and colleague, Rick Griffin, who's joining us from the Community Resilience Initiative.
Thank you, Cody. Yes, my passion is really talking about resilience and where it intersects with race and all kinds of other issues that help us to unite. So looking forward to sharing some thoughts with some folks, and especially alongside of these wonderful other panelist members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here and bringing your wisdom and voice to the conversation. And then another dear friend and colleague working here in the Kitsap community alongside us is Aaron Leidick, and I'd love to have Aaron introduce himself as well, please.
Hey everybody, my name's Aaron. It's nice to see you all. Sorry I wasn't able to join this morning. As Cody said, I'm in Kitsap on Coastal Salish People's Territory, Suquamish specifically. I'm an organizer, community advocate, and I'm here today because the intersection of ACEs, trauma-informed care, and anti-racist community-based organizing is one of the places I spend a lot of my time. So glad to be with you today.
Thank you, Aaron. Really deeply appreciate you being able to take some time to join us together for this conversation. And then last, but definitely not least, another new individual to the conversation joining us for this afternoon's panel is my dear friend, Robin Saigo with the Suquamish Tribe. Robin?
Hi, everybody. Lots of technical difficulties, so I'm so glad to make it in. And right after Erin, who I look up to quite a bit, and Cody, who's here. I mean, this is really an amazing group of people to be here with. My name is Robin Littlewing Saigo. I am a member of the Suquamish Tribe, and I sit on our tribal council as the only woman on that council. And I'm the mom of 4 kids, and I have been a social worker for 15, 16 years now, officially with my MSW, and I feel like that has always been my work, that part of my job is has always been as a healer and a story catcher and a story sharer. So I'm looking forward to hearing some stories today and sharing some.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. Deeply appreciate your time and talent and willingness to join us for this conversation. And then Juliet, thank you so much for continuing to be here with us and continuing to grace us with your wisdom and your voice, and Ruhi as well. So I think those are the panelists that we have that are still able to be with us from this morning, unless Delana, am I missing somebody who I don't see on camera?
No, Blair and Diana were not able to stay with us unexpectedly, so we are here. We are whole.
Beautiful. And I do encourage everyone, as we want this to be as engaging as possible, please share questions that you may have for the panelists in the chat. I had the extreme pleasure to have conversations with most of the panelists prior to this conversation, and I'm just going to kind of kick us off with a question here, and I'm going to start with Rick, because he was the first person that I had a conversation with prepping for this. So it's the one that is freshest in my mind right now at this moment. But Rick and I had a fabulous conversation, and I've always deeply appreciated the opportunity to learn alongside Rick. And in the conversation and planning and prepping for this, Rick, we were having this discussion and this conversation about the intersection of these different sources of toxic stress or trauma, or the language that we're looking for here, and the intersection of, you know, racial trauma, of adverse childhood experiences, of the collective trauma of COVID, and how might understanding neuroscience help us to understand these human experiences. And in that conversation, Rick, you invited in the idea of, you know, does our brain and body respond any differently? You know, like, what is worse, the roar of a bear or the hiss of a snake? So I wanted to just ask you to share with us, from your understanding of the neuroscience, how might a deeper understanding of neuroscience help us understand these very human experiences of trauma, regardless of the source?
Yeah, well, thanks, Cody. And I'd love to get real nerdy on you, and I promise I won't do that. But what I love about the neuroscience is it's dealing with this brain that's locked away in the skull, and it can't see what's going on. And so it's relying on information from these millions and millions of neurons that are firing all around us. And so, like I said, it doesn't know the difference in pain. When it perceives a threat, it's taking that in as a threat to the whole body. It's saying that there's something out there in the world is a threat, and sometimes even something inside of our body. It's a threat to our survival system and our ability to connect with one another. And anytime that there is a threat, it jumps to respond. And so I think it's, although I understand the need to really be specific in certain circumstances and the need to have focus in certain areas, understanding how they all are interlinked because of that simple threat response, I think it brings us to a common humanity, and we don't stay separated in that sense. We start recognizing that, wow, yes, I've felt that threat in my body, maybe for different things, but I felt that threat. And so I can really start to recognize and really start to come to some understanding of how somebody else might respond when their threat response has kind of gone off as well.
And Rick, just one more point that I thought was really profound and I've been sitting with a lot was this idea around preparing for the potential of a threat. Can you talk to me a little bit more, or share with the audience a little bit more about what you were describing there?
Yeah, it really comes down to our brain being predictive and not reactive. In order to be super efficient, it certainly can't wait to decide what it is. So it really takes all the information around and really determines, well, what situation do you think we're in based on all the information that I'm receiving? And it starts making predictions. One of the good examples that we talk about is an apple. If you have any experience with an apple, it's going to be based on, okay, I see what this thing is. I see the shape of it. I see the color of it. So chances are really good that it's going to be a sweet apple. And so we'll start releasing mechanisms to be able to digest that apple better, even before you take that bite. So when we start understanding that we're predicting some of the things that are going on to try to keep our brain in that effective mode, others from the outside don't recognize what's happening on the inside, and so they're much more quickly to judge our predictions, and they don't know that our body's just trying to keep us safe. We use terrible terms like being defensive, when really we should be using terms like, no, their body's trying to keep them safe, just like our bodies would if it thought it was under threat. And I know that words matter, there's power in words, but when we can start looking at those things as they're trying to keep themselves safe, it does bring, like I said, more humanity to the situation, and at least a common humanity in that sense.
Thank you so much, Rick. Appreciate that. And I please encourage and invite all of the panelists to take yourselves off mute and interact with one another. And so if there's something that Rick shared that resonates with you or something you want to respond to, please don't hesitate to jump in.
I think, Rick, that was such an excellent example. I love that apple metaphor. I think it reminds me of one of my mentors who had first told me about adverse childhood experiences and working through trauma. She talked about remaining curious about people, that like once you name something, you dismiss it, that you know what an orange is. And so if somebody says, I like oranges, then you're like, oh, okay, I like oranges too, or I don't like oranges, and you're kind of done with that. But if you describe all the things that you like about an orange, you guys might like completely different things in that orange, but all of those things are valid and important. And that curiosity that we have, if we lend that to people as opposed to, just saying, this is what this is, and then moving on from it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Rick, for saying everything that we needed to be reminded of. Right, some of us, or the majority of us, are educated and we've taken some psychology classes, we've done all these different things, but sometimes you just got to say it out. You can't think that they remember and that they're still in that moment. You just got to say what needs to be said and just put it out there, and most people can receive it. The way you explain that, I don't see why nobody would be able to not come along with you in this conversation and be able to learn and grow. The way that you share is just so open, and in the knowledge base is just like, what else is he going to say? So I'm feeding on it. I'm in the chats like, yes, say that, teach us, because every time you don't give all of the parts, somebody in the group may miss that piece, and that might be that connected piece. So I thank you. You wrapped all around that, and we need to share the knowledge and be able to go back sometimes even to our own education so that we are continuing to build. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherilyn.
All right, I have a question for Juliet. We've done a little bit of work together, but we're still in the new working together phase still, and so we've talked about a lot of things, and in Juliet's word, you said previously that you were trained in anthropology, and I missed the other part. But given the work that you do across truly cross-cultural, but with urban indigenous communities, in bringing more people access to the healing side of nature and what it offers, right? That not just first foods, not just this, but really just the presence of it. What are some of the ways that you see historical trauma really impacting how people seek mental health care? So as we walk through all these things and we look at different cultures and how they engage with the mental health systems, how they engage with their own care, what kind of care they choose, what are some ways that you see historical trauma impacting how people engage or how they seek?
Let me share with me. My brain's going so many things. I want to really engage with what Rick said, and I've got to kind of bring myself back in. So I will say there's the obvious things, the institutional things, what neighborhoods you live in. Do you have a job with healthcare and your poverty level and things like that? And I want for the rest of my remarks to assume that we understand those things exist, because what I would like to address is a bit more specific than that. My community, both the indigenous community I'm from and just my community of my friends, we are really examining what it means to get medical help, what it means to get therapy. And a lot of what we are encountering is that it's not even just whether we have access to therapy anymore, but we have had so many collective experiences that therapy has further scarred us, that it has actually made trauma worse. And it's twofold. One of them is that most of the time, anyone from dominant culture practicing inclusive or trauma-based or trauma-informed therapy is they tend to forget that inherently they are part of the oppressor. And I know that's really heavy language, but if we're in this day and age and caretakers cannot sit with that weight, it's time for you maybe to take a step back and learn to sit with that weight. Because what happens is that you speak with the weight of the medical or clinical profession behind you. And as dominant culture, you have to understand that those things have been used categorically to harm BIPOC populations. And everything from all of these things to the Tuskegee experiments, to literally experimenting on our Black soldiers, to removing children from homes, like what happened in my own communities, to the fact, and this is the second part that we have found, this is really where our trauma is becoming recursive, and instead of engaging with therapies that are traditionally offered, we're removing ourselves from the communities entirely, is that white cis-normative therapists don't tend to understand how living in contemporary culture is trauma. And there's a meme floating around in Indian country right now. It says, what you don't seem to understand is that Native people are already living post-apocalypse. And I want everybody to just breathe for a second. And I'm gonna say that again. The Native nations of North, Central, and South America have already had our communities apocalypse. This is a post-apocalyptic culture we are living in. Every single one of our religions, lifeways, lineage systems, trade systems, economic systems are disrupted and inverted. There are none that remain pure. And if you cannot have someone who cares for your mental and spiritual health understand what that means, it's very hard to move forward. And what we're finding is that collectively we have to go into our own communities, because that bridge is not gapped. It's not gapped with our coworkers. It's not gapped with our therapist. It's not gapped with people who give us our medication. I have an anxiety disorder. I am medicated. And there are people that are like, you would be so much healthier if you did this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a triathlete. I used to do triathlons and clean eat. I got in trouble for losing weight during my pregnancy. This isn't a physical, if you make your body healthy enough issue, your brain stops fighting you chemically. And I think that that's one of the things that I would say going into a nurturing environment is understanding that a lot of the communities that you are serving and are called to serve and very graciously serving, it is a worldview different. It is a worldview different. And you need to think of that from the indigenous perspective, from the Black perspective, and from the immigrant perspective, is if you're going to help someone, you can't just be like, my lens is the lens. And how we interface with nature deeply interacts with that. So I know that was heavy. I can see Delena's face. But if we have to sit with that weight, I think everybody has to sit with that weight, because that is the biggest source of our trauma. We are disconnected from our language. We are disconnected from our religion. We are disconnected from our land. And most of us are disconnected from our families and our food. And that is institutionally cross-culture. That is all of us. in our community have that loss on one level or another. And it's much different when your ACE score is historical. Like your community has an ACE score. The Native community has an ACE score. The Latinx community has an ACE score. The queer community has an ACE score. And I think right now we can all agree the Black community's ACE score is off the charts. Like if we could even quantify it more. So remember, these communities have individual ACE scores, but our cultures should also be acknowledged as having an ACE score.
Thank you, Juliet.
Damn, thank you, Juliet. Man, can we get together and hang out, please? Sorry, I can't keep panel formality right now. Like, the panel is now done.
None of the rest of us want to either, Aaron. You're fine.
That was powerful. I have no words, but thank you, Juliet.
And
I actually, Aaron, did want to invite
you for your truth. And thank you for sharing thoughts of a lot of people that are in this group and our community members. It takes a lot for you to always be ready to have this conversation and go transition from space to space. And I just want to take some time and honor you and thank you for being here and being present, because it takes a whole lot. And, you know, I mean, it takes a lot. And every day we are up and ready and doing it. And hey, I appreciate you. Keep on doing that work. We got your back.
Thank you, Shaylin. Thank you so much. And Juliet, you're getting much deserved love and appreciation in the chat and from the other panelists. And Aaron, I did, I sensed you wanting to respond to this because this was the conversation that we had in preparation for coming to this. And so I would invite you in to reflect on this. I think that what I was sitting with was that the systems of care and healing from their paradigm of believing that the trauma is individual, focused on individual healing, and that paradigm itself is incapable maybe of helping facilitate the type of healing that needs to happen at a community or a cultural level. So I'd love you to respond to or continue that conversation.
I don't know how you all have been going in the morning. I'm gonna speak like I speak. What Cody said, here's how I'm gonna say it. Like making an icon out of individualism has fucked us up. Like that is the way we get raised for sure as people, white-skinned people, you know, on this land. Like I come from, you know, a working class background, I'm queer, I'm trans, but it doesn't matter. Like that idea of like individual achievement and perfection was still something I could buy into, right? As I was coming up, that is how it's taught to us. So to me, Juliet, when you're speaking, I'm always thinking in relationship to the conversation about really understanding like how trauma functions on a deep level means beginning to be able to break down this lie of dichotomy that is sold, right? Like the self and the other, right? So until we start breaking that, there always will become from models that privilege individualism, this is the way, you know, whiteness is constructed, there will always be a dismissal of collective experience and of interdependence. So I think about how when in the first time I saw the ACEs questionnaire, you know, I had a few different reactions. One thing was like, this is like my scrappy, you know, poor kid background is like, well, nobody's gonna fucking find out my score on this. You can be damn sure of that. Like I'm keeping that to myself, right? That was one part. But the other thing, like my kind of adult who's learned to reflect on this stuff was like, why are all these questions about from the perspective of the individual? That doesn't make any sense. Like you're trying to understand adverse experiences of someone, you can't just ask those things. And then when we had, before our trauma-informed care, that language came to Kitsap, you know, we had the neurosciences language and we're in our training on that. And I remember sitting at a small group table with Kathy Kinsey, who has been doing this work forever, and deep into like day one, hour 6, with the language and here's neurosciences and here's what it stands for and here's the science, and like, you know, love to that framing, but obviously it's a framing that's late to the game, right? When you consider all the cultural framings. Kathy saying, yep, you know, I think it was 25 or 30 years ago when I was trying to do this for my thesis, they basically said, well, you can't just make something up, right? She was using like cultural rootedness to bring this framework, but because it's where her words came from, that's where her perspective came from, it was dismissed as magic or nothing that couldn't be in the academic realm. One of the pieces, I think, when you were talking, Juliet, about like not being able to sit with the weight, right? For those of us who are white people, or if you're coming at from perspective of being cis or whatever, I think about there's just this puny amount of resiliency, right? When you have been in the cultural up place, the colonialist place, that dominant place, there's no generational development of resiliency. The identity, the experience is built on domination over, not resiliency. So yes, recently a conversation about this has been related to COVID for me, because we'll be sort of talking, everybody's aware, you know, increased impact, right? On Black community, on Indigenous communities, and people will be deep into that. And then I'll have sitting in a space or whatever, Zoom now, and somebody will be saying, you know, I don't feel comfortable. Like if they have a vaccine, I don't feel comfortable going to this place to get tested, right? And oftentimes it's a friend who is Black or African American who is saying that. And I would see those of us who are white get really reactive to that. Like, you have to trust the science. And it's like, back up. Like, you can both understand it's harmful and disproportionately impacting people, and also think about why somebody might not want to go to the doctor when testing out a vaccine. What are the things that could be at play there? And that trauma doesn't live in your own chronological age alone, right? It lives in that collective experience. So I'm fired up about this now. I'm going on a tangent, but to me, that flip side of there's not, if we don't, as people who are white, realize that, like, in our raising up to that specter of individuality and dominance, there's not built-in resilience to having the hard conversations, right? There's not a built-in, treasured, like, investment in interdependence that keeps repeating. Because some of you know, Karen Vargas is here in Kitsap too, and a really close friend of mine will often be in this thing about organizing, and she'll say, talk to me again about why it is that white people are so afraid of not knowing something, right? So afraid, like scrambling to pretend that I'd have all the details, because
or why is that? What is that? I face that all the time. What is that? The I don't know is so uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think that the construct of whiteness, right, which we all know that's some fake thing that's been made up, right? But the construct of that is built on knowing, all knowing, right? I don't know, Juliet. It's nonsense. The true answer is it's nonsense, but it's functioning like reality, right? It's functioning like reality. So anyway, I'm off tangent, and I don't know what time it is, but you've got me fired up, and I want us all to be in a room right now.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Deeply appreciate you participation. So thank you.
I was going to.
And I think recognizing that.
Please, Robin.
Sorry.
No, please, Robin. Go ahead.
I think that recognizing that white people got duped out of their culture. Like, that's what happened. That's what coming to America ended up with, is you losing it and getting distilled down to whiteness instead of the indigenous places that you come from. That you each have cultures and parts of that heritage that are still there that really want you to look into them, and not with like a full-on mysticism where, you know, you're sure you come from a, you know, Celtic chieftain or something like that, but you could come from anything, but find out what those are. I think that one of the things like that you're looking for, or that people are looking for always, is connection, and that curiosity can lead to connection. I think a lot of times curiosity doesn't get the best rap, because I think people think of it in terms of, you know, scientists trying to study something. But just remaining curious can be such a compassionate thing for somebody and for a community, that all communities have a sense of culture. You know, I mean, even your like neighborhood Facebook groups where, you know, somebody's like, I think I heard a gunshot. No, wait, that was a firework. No, wait, that was somebody's car backfiring. All of those little pieces that like make up your neighborhood, and it's easy to get annoyed by a lot of them, but there's also ways to utilize that. You know, what does it mean that we're all living in a neighborhood together? And really look at what some of those core values are, so you can fall back on those in difficult times when you start getting in arguments about things. It doesn't mean like, I mean, the idea of cancel culture, I can cancel somebody, yeah, but they're not totally away ever. Just because I say that doesn't make that a reality. Like, I mean, there's lots of things like kicking people off an island. Well, you can't really do that. And in the tribe, I think growing up in this community on this reservation, like, I know that we have to still deal with people that are sexual perpetrators, because they're still people, they're still in the community. And how do I help them heal, hopefully, help their victims heal, and protect the community and protect people from them? That's a real question. That's a real thing that I, as a leader here, have had to have that discussion numerous times. And it's not a pretty conversation. It's not an easy conversation. It's that gray area that we get stuck in all the time. But there is no way. We're not throwing anybody away. We're just hiding them out for a while until, you know, our comeuppance happens. I mean, and if I could have people stop telling me that this pandemic is unprecedented, that would be awesome, because it's not. I feel this all the time. Like, we're going to get through this like we've gotten through other things, but we're going to lose lives in this. We're going to have people with long-term health issues. And, you know, mental health is a health issue as well, as we all know and agree. So, you know, I think this is a time to really explore, what does it mean to connect with people? What does it mean to, you know, feel something that, you know, with all the stuff going on with Breonna Taylor, and, you know, really feeling that in my heart and soul, you know, having never met her, having, you know, not being over there where these protests are happening, but feeling it resonate within my body and within my community. That's what's going to create global connection. That's what makes global change.
Thank you, Robin. You know, as facilitators, oh, sorry, go ahead. As facilitators, we try to plan very well, and I love when my plans are interrupted by greatness and beauty and depth that I hope for always and don't always get to see. So my heart is full. And Ruhi, I just warned you that I'm going to change the question that we had talked about, because I get to work really closely with you. And so I will share that one of the pieces of why I get to enjoy working with the juvenile court system, despite its challenges, as a community member from the outside looking in, one of the reasons is I watch you model some things that I struggle with, and I want to ask you to briefly give folks here, give some of these white folks some tips about how you manage your own reactions and catch yourself, because you walk through this work with me, and I've noticed a level of humility that is rare. And so I want to give you props for that and ask you, not like, how are you so humble, Ruhi? I don't mean it like that, but how do you manage to be mindful of your own reactions so that you stay curious and kind? What do you do to remind yourself to stay open? Because we've had a lot of conversations lately, and I know that you work in a larger system. So tell us about that, if you would, please.
Well, first things first, it's very humbling to be here and part of this panel. Second thing is I'm an emotional person, so if I start to emote, just go with it, because that's the way I am.
We can do that.
But
I feel you.
some people get, animated. I get teary-eyed when I feel things real deeply. But to answer your question, I think that it takes a certain level of self-reflection to be able to get to a point where you can recognize what's happening in your body when your defense mechanisms come up, and understand that, to be able to kind of step out of yourself, if you will, and view it as an outside entity almost, and realize that whatever is being said is not about you as an individual. If somebody's speaking their truth, that's their truth, and that is not your place to decide what, the value of that truth. There's so much power in just listening, that, when there are differences of opinions and differences of perspectives, giving people that space to be heard, I think opens up the opportunity for you to be heard as well. Not quite sure if that answers your question, but I also want to say that, as a white, cis, heterosexual man, that those of us that fall into that category of privilege, have to recognize the responsibility we have to use that for the better of everyone. And we have benefited from it for generations and generations. And it's well overdue that we use it for the good of our country, our communities, so that to raise up everyone who's been oppressed for so many years.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ruhi. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat there, and I wanted to invite in Rick, because we started off this morning. I fumbled us through a conversation around how the paradigm, the mental model, the way that we think about problems determines the solutions that we seek. And you, in your work with CRI, have introduced some really phenomenal paradigms and adding to the adverse childhood experiences kind of way of understanding our world. You've added in some other ones that I think really help to expand this conversation. I'd love you to share that with the audience if you have a second.
Yeah, sure. Aaron had talked about neurodiversity, and we talk about that in terms of adverse circuitry expression, when your circuitry is just a little different. We're not always looking at things as diseases or disorders. Sometimes it's just different, pure and simple. And the trauma that causes when people don't understand that, and they've made their own decision about what is typical and what is normal. Looking at what you talked about in terms of the pandemic and other issues as adverse catastrophic events. There are more than just pandemics that have been, these catastrophic events have been happening to cultures and people for a long time. This is nothing new to many people. So looking at how that affects folks, and clearly the topic of the day, as we're looking at adverse cultural exposures, being exposed to a different culture that really starts that the cortisol and the adrenaline, that whole hyperarousal process going, because you are just seen as an out group and not an in-group member. And then Wendy Dietz Ellis and her group out of George Washington University that talked about adverse community environments. Those, when you live in a community that is struggling. I love the way Juliet said that, a community with ACE scores, high ACE scores. You've got a community that's dealing with those kind of things. You can only expect the members of those communities to be struggling with some of that stress. So those are the other ACE categories in which we like to bring to the table. Not taking anything off the table. We think the ACE Adverse Childhood Experiences is a phenomenal, seminal study, beautiful work. It's just adding other things to the table.
Beautiful, Rick, and I really appreciate that, because I've heard this play out in our own community, where there's this back to the paradigm, this zero-sum kind of paradigm, this white supremacy paradigm, that if we add something to it, we have to take something away. I've literally heard arguments in our community about amazing community efforts are to honor and to acknowledge the experience of a Native American who had lost his life in our community, and a movement around Black Lives Matter. And there was a conversation about the organizing and about whether we should be acknowledging both of these simultaneously, right? Because there was this overarching paradigm that if we acknowledge them both, we're gonna have to take one away instead of just acknowledging that both of these are true, and we need to create space for both of these and adding more things to that table. So I appreciate that. It also makes me think of food, which is my favorite thing, and putting more things on the table is awesome. I like that. I wanted to create space because I think Juliet, Robin, Aaron, are there things that you want to respond to as this conversation is unfolding?
I would like to hear more from Robin.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll always hear more from Robin. And I also can't totally see the chat. If there's somebody who put something in there that they want to talk about and we're not hitting it, maybe they want to unmute too. But Robin, of course.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that vote of confidence. I don't think my chat made it through that my power actually went out. So I've just had nothing but technical difficulties. So I had to jump on my phone and there's no light. So it's like natural light. It's all good. And I mean, when Rick was talking about that feeling of that hyperarousal kind of thing that happens in moments of stress, I was thinking that like as soon as those happened, or I couldn't find the link to get in, and I'm like, who can I contact who I know is there, who I won't be interrupting while they're speaking, you know, to get on here because I want to make a good impression. Like there's this constant need. My first response is, oh my God, how do I fit into this, you know, white normative that I've been, you know, taught to do? Whereas the other part of me is like, you know what? You can't control the weather, Robin. It took me a lot of years in therapy to realize I can't control everything, no matter how hard I try. You know, that those, you know, intergenerational trauma and, you know, trauma that's happened within my own lifetime affects all of those things. Like how much can I control in the situation? And, you know, I'm really grateful to be in my 40s right now and having learned a lot about myself over the years to, you know, I jokingly call it the fuck it 40s because, you know, I have to let things go and that's okay. And that, you know, that I didn't do all the prep work that I really wish that I had done for this. But I also knew that Cody felt like I could do this. So I'm going to borrow some of Cody's trust in me to come on here and be ready for this, even though, you know, my schedule has been jam-packed. And, you know, I know Tiff is on here and I owe her an email and a text. And, you know, there's all of those things that go on when you're doing all of this work, right? Because our hearts and souls and energy is so big that we want to be involved in all of these things because I feel like my ancestors didn't get the opportunities that I had to come in here and share these stories. And that then I have to hold on to those stories and take them and then share them when I need to. And so, you know, I always like to say that there's a reason why you see Native women and we've always got a lot of jewelry on or big earrings. I mean, I saw Juliet's earrings too, you know, is because for me, the weight of carrying everybody's stories is a lot. I'm tired by the end of the day. Sometimes I'm tired by 8:52 in the morning and, you know, I just had my first meeting at 8:30. So by the end of the day, my jewelry is heavy and it feels like there's something I can take off and store that for later because I'm going to remember. And, you know, the jewelry that I carry with me, you know, the stuff that's made by Indigenous people, the stuff that I paid full price for, right? Because we're going to pay artists full price for their work because that's an important part of this community, is that I have stories that are nestled into these. I have Indigenous wisdom that's nestled into these that I can decide what I need to put on to have the strength to get through my day. And that I can take off and take a break from and have that boundary that I need to make sure that I can be fully attentive to my kids or fully attentive to myself when I need to. So through that process of story catching and storytelling that we all have to do, we have to find ways to do that. And self-care doesn't always look like bubbles baths, though sometimes it does. For my friends that like those, you know, you do that. But it's really that way of holding things that are true, but holding things that are true is heavy.
Thank you so much for that, Robin. I think, Aaron, I don't know if you were going to take yourself off and share something. If not, I think Delana had one final question that you wanted to pose to all of the panelists.
Can I say something after Rob? Just, Robin, I think the word you used was okay as you were describing it. You're like, and that's okay, you know, the fucking 40s, etc. I'm there with you. I just, for me, hearing you say that, it's more, it's like more than, I don't want to use superlatives, but like, then okay, it's the thing that will make the change. Like you're role modeling that and then sharing that out. It's a gift, right? And it's what shifts if we all are doing that and prioritizing that way of that vulnerability and that interdependence and the curiosity, and going after that and disrupting those other norms that are put out there, perfectionism and control, etc. That's what makes a change. So just thank you for the gift of doing that. And I'm always a person you can text during the meeting and say help. And I won't know some of the time, but then we can just text each other while everybody else is in the meeting. So it'll be great. Okay.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes left, which means you guys get 2 minutes. But I want, will you please take off, to the degree that you can, take off as many mental hats and roles and responsibilities. Panelists, ground yourself in you as a human, just a human. And share, if you can, what gives you hope. Not you the professional or you the leader. What gives you as a human hope for our future?
I can share what gives me hope is my 14-year-old son who was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at 3. And now he's in a mainstream school. He's kicking ass. He's got A's and B's. So even hard things can be overcome. And I know that's just from a lot of love, a lot of people, a whole, more than a community, loving him to make that happen. And so if he can do it, that gives me hope for all the things that I'm enduring.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Juliet or Robin?
I'll reach out. It starts out sounding kind of pithy, but I mentioned that I'm an anthropologist and archaeologist, and I got the opportunity to see Jane Goodall speak. And I had this conversation with her about this, like, what gives you hope? And she said, because humans are tool-using primates. And for me, the conversation what that meant is we are solution-oriented. We're evolutionarily designed for community, and we're evolutionarily designed to solve problems. That's literally what neuroplastic elasticity is. That's what makes us human. And then from the indigenous perspective, if I know that 7 generations back, I was loved into existence, and I know that my daughter and I are loving 7 generations forward into existence, and that on that continuum, I'm in the middle of that right now, and knowing that I am present in that middle, being middle-aged and being a single mom and a BIPOC queer woman, like there's all these things that are wrapped up in my identity. And rather than taking them all off, this is the first time in my life that just about in every aspect of my life, I have one narrative, I have one truth, and I'm not having to constantly take off different. And it's partly what Robin said, the fuck it 40s. I'm too tired to do this all day. So it's like, here's my hat, I wear a ponytail, and this is me, and bless you for being patient. But I think that's what makes me hopeful, is that I'm a place that I can do that. And if through my personal struggles, I can get to that place, and we have community helping everybody get to that place. And we're hardwired to solve problems, and we're hardwired to be community, which means we're hardwired to solve problems through community.
And not surprisingly, I think that my hopefulness comes from a place similar to Juliet's, which is, you know, I believe that the tide is going to come in and out every day. I believe the moon is going to come up. I believe that stars are going to be there and that they're going to shine, and that my love capacity and everybody I meet, their love capacity is to be like that tide and be like those stars, like that it's going to keep coming out. It's going to keep lighting the way. It's going to keep moving things back and forth, and it's going to bring things to us, and it's going to take things away from us. But our capacity to love is so vast and great, and I'm going to always choose that route. I'm going to choose to believe that there is something to love in everybody. I'm going to choose to believe that my love is going to grow and change, and that even in moments of sadness and heartache and devastation, that there's going to be another moment for me to love.
Aaron, Ruby? One of you is going to have the last word. So, you know, I mean.
I definitely don't want to have the last word. Sorry, Aaron. So first, I would just say moments like these with people like you doing the work give me hope and inspiration. And then my own children, my own teenagers who are just badass kids who've been through so much adversity, who are biracial, and my oldest is trans, and they are badass, and they're not fearful of anything. And they're resilient like you wouldn't believe. And I look to them for inspiration every day.
Yeah, this conversation gives me hope. I think, well, Juliet is from anthropology. I'm from philosophy. So I'm going to use the word embodiment. Like we're bodies, and our brains are part of our bodies. And I have hope every day from the way we can find connection through our overlaps and our divergences, you know, as we are living, as we're in our bodies. And I'm weird, like I take hope from weirdness, like things that get thought of as weirdness or not part of what's normal. And no matter how much dominance and homogeneity gets pressed, it seems that like weirdness in quotes comes back, right? Like the tide, like Robin's saying, it's like, nope, look around you. Like there's all things, all beautiful things, like go and seek them. So I think that can't be kept down. Yeah. Love you all. Thanks for being here today.
We've been bemoaning technology all day. Robin, your power went out. They they switched my electric meter literally 4 minutes before the start of this, and my whole internet shut down, and I was supposed to be the one who opened this. But I am incredibly grateful that this conversation is recorded, and that I will have the opportunity to listen to the wisdom of these incredible humans again and again, because it's going to take numerous times for the gravity of the brilliance that you shared here with us for me to pick up all of that. But I am so grateful for the gifts of you bringing that and giving it to us and giving it to this community. I'm grateful for walking alongside all of you in this work. And I think that there's no better way for us to end this. I want to thank Marlena for her incredible work behind the scenes, for getting us all connected on here, navigating all of this. Amazing. Thank you, Marlena. Delana, for the opportunity to hold this space, create this space with you, to work alongside you, and to Marilyn and the Department of Health for resourcing us so that we could create this, and having trust and faith that we could do this virtually, knowing that it was going to be hard to do this conversation when we're so much more comfortable being in person. But thank you, everyone, and I invite you all to continue connecting, and thank you so much.
Panelists, thank you for making this what we hoped it could be. We're going to stick around for a few, but that's today. We'll be in touch with a report out and the recording as soon as possible.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.